What if everything you were taught about the pyramids is a lie? These are not tombs. They never were. Look closer. The granite lining these shafts conducts electricity. The surrounding limestone insulates it. This is not religious architecture. This is a circuit. From the Giza Plateau to the temples of Central America, the same geometric precision, the same conductive materials, and the same impossible engineering are repeated across civilizations that were never supposed to have met. By the end of this investigation, you will see how these stone giants were not monuments to the dead but nodes in a global wireless power grid. We will show you the science, the geometry, and the hidden connections that mainstream history does not want you to find. The ancients did not just build for eternity. They built to power it. The Giza Plateau rises from the sands of the Libyan desert like a silent limestone kingdom. At its heart stands a great pyramid, a monument so vast and so precise that it defies the traditional narrative of Bronze Age tools and simple labor. For centuries, we have looked at this structure through the lens of a tomb, a grand monument to a fallen pharaoh. Yet, the deeper we probe into its internal geometry and its material composition, the more it begins to resemble something entirely different. It looks less like a resting place for the dead, and more like a machine designed for the living. The scale of the project is staggering. Over 2 million blocks of stone, some weighing as much as 70 tons, are fitted together with such precision that a razor blade cannot slide between the joints. This is not the work of a civilization merely trying to stack stones. This is a work of engineers who understood the fundamental laws of the physical world. The pyramid is aligned to true north within 3/60ths of a degree. It sits at the exact center of the landmass of the earth. These are not coincidences. They are the hallmarks of a global vision, a plan that extends far beyond the borders of ancient Egypt. As the morning sun strikes the golden sands, the shadows of the pyramid stretch across the horizon. We begin to see the site not as a graveyard, but as a node in a prehistoric network. To understand this potential power grid, we must look past the hieroglyphs and focus on the physics of the stone itself. The Great Pyramid is not made of a single type of rock. It is a composite of different materials, each chosen for its specific electromagnetic and acoustic properties. The bulk of the structure is local limestone, but the interior chambers and the original outer casing tell a different story. The casing stones, most of which were stripped away centuries ago to build the city of Cairo, were made of white Chura limestone. This stone is highly insulating. It contains almost no magnesium and possesses high electrical resistance. This outer shell would have acted as a massive insulator, wrapping the entire structure in a protective, non-conductive layer. Beneath this white shell, the inner workings of the pyramid are composed of a very different material. The King's Chamber, the Grand Gallery, and the 5 relieving chambers above it are all made of red rose granite brought from Aswan, over 500 miles away. This granite contains a high concentration of quartz crystal. Quartz is well known in modern science for its piezoelectric properties. When quartz is subjected to mechanical stress or vibration, it generates an electric charge. If the pyramid were designed to vibrate, the granite interior would have become a massive generator of electricity. The question then becomes what could have caused such a colossal structure to vibrate. Proponents of the power plant theory point to the Earth itself. Our planet is a humming, vibrating ball of energy. It produces seismic waves and constant low-frequency vibrations known as the Schumann resonance. The Great Pyramid is scaled to the dimensions of the Earth. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the planet. If you take the base perimeter and multiply it by that same number, you get the equatorial circumference. The pyramid is a mathematical map of the Earth, and it may have been tuned to the Earth's own frequency. Imagine the Giza Plateau as it was thousands of years ago. The Nile River once flowed much closer to the base of the pyramids. Water may have moved through underground limestone tunnels, creating a phenomenon known as physioelectricity. As the water rushed through the porous rock, it would have created a flow of electrons. This energy could have been captured by the pyramid, which acted as a massive resonator, pulling energy from the earth and concentrating it in the upper chambers. Inside the King's chamber, the atmosphere is heavy and silent. There are no inscriptions on the walls, no paintings of gods or kings, and no evidence that a sarcophagus ever held a body. The granite box located here is often called a sarcophagus, but it shows no signs of ever being used for burial. It is oversized, roughly hewn on the outside but polished to a mirror finish on the inside. When struck, it rings like a tuning fork. It is a resonant vessel. The theory suggests that the pyramid functioned as a coupled oscillator. It was designed to vibrate in harmony with the earth. This vibration would have been converted into sound, and that sound, through the piezoelectric granite, would have been converted into electromagnetic energy. But for what purpose? Why would an ancient civilization need such a massive amount of power? To answer this, we must look at the work of Nikola Tesla, the father of the modern electrical age. At the turn of the 20th century, Tesla built a massive tower at Wardenclyffe on Long Island. His goal was to achieve the wireless transmission of energy. Tesla believed that the earth itself could be used as a conductor. By pumping energy into the ground at specific frequencies, he hoped to allow anyone anywhere in the world to tap into that power with a simple antenna. Tesla was fascinated by the pyramids. He spent years studying their dimensions and their placement. He believed there were ancient versions of his own Wardenclyffe Tower, designed to broadcast energy across the globe. If we entertain this possibility, the history of our species takes on a new and startling shape. We are no longer looking at a slow, linear progression from primitive hunters to modern technologists. Instead, we see a cycle. We see a peak of high technology in the distant past, a civilization that understood how to harness the free energy of the planet without the need for wires or fossil fuels. This was the antediluvian world, the era before the Great Flood described in the myths of every major culture on Earth. This lost civilization did not leave behind books or hard drives. They left their knowledge in stone. They built their libraries in the form of megaliths, structures that could survive for tens of thousands of years. The Great Pyramid is a message in a bottle, a testament to a science that we are only now beginning to rediscover. As we move through the Grand Gallery, the architecture speaks of an industrial purpose. The walls are lined with slots that may have once held massive resonator plates. The ceiling is corbelled, designed to withstand immense pressure and to direct acoustic energy toward the King's chamber. There are shafts leading from the interior chambers to the outside of the pyramid. For a long time, these were thought to be air shafts or alignments with the stars of Orion and Sirius. While the stellar alignments are mathematically accurate, the shafts do not always exit the pyramid in a straight line. They bend and turn, suggesting they were designed to carry something other than light or air. Chemical analysis of these shafts has revealed traces of hydrofluoric acid and zinc chloride. These are the ingredients for a dilute acid solution. Some researchers propose that the Queen's chamber was a reaction tank where these chemicals were mixed to produce hydrogen gas. This gas would have filled the interior chambers, providing the medium through which the acoustic energy could be converted into microwave radiation. The pyramid, in this view, was a maser, a microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. It was a massive, stone-built laser. This interpretation transforms the Giza Plateau into a power plant of incredible proportions. It suggests that the ancient Egyptians, or perhaps a civilization that preceded them, had a level of technical sophistication that matches or exceeds our own. They were not primitive people obsessed with the afterlife. They were a global society obsessed with energy and the mastery of the physical world. The echoes of this antediluvian dynamo can be found far beyond Egypt. From the pyramids of Teotihuacan in Mexico to the ziggurats of Mesopotamia and the step temples of Southeast Asia, we see a recurring pattern of massive, precisely aligned stone structures. Many of these sites are located on what some call ley lines, or telluric currents, which are natural electrical paths through the Earth's crust. If the Great Pyramid was a transmitter, these other sites may have been receivers, creating a global wireless power grid that spanned the entire planet. But if such a system existed, what happened to it? Why is it silent today? The answer may lie in a global catastrophe that reset the clock of human history. Geological evidence suggests that at the end of the last ice age, roughly 12,000 years ago, the Earth experienced a series of violent events. Massive floods, volcanic eruptions, and rapid climate shifts could have destroyed the infrastructure of this global grid. The knowledge of how to operate these machines was lost, leaving behind only the stone shells and the myths of a golden age when the gods walked among men and provided them with light and power. Today, we stand in the shadow of these giants, trying to decipher their purpose. We look at the smooth granite and the towering heights, feeling a sense of that transcends time. The possibility that the pyramids were wireless transmitters challenges everything we thought we knew about our past. It suggests that our ancestors were not just builders of tombs, but masters of the elements. As we continue to explore the Giza Plateau, we are not just uncovering the secrets of a dead kingdom. We are listening for the echoes of a lost technology, a power that once connected the world and may one day do so again. The desert wind whistles through the narrow passages of the Great Pyramid, a haunting sound that reminds us of the machine's potential. The stones are still there. The quartz is still there. The alignment remains perfect. The dynamo is silent, but it is not gone. It is a sleeping giant, waiting for a civilization with the wisdom to understand its song. We are only now beginning to find the frequency. The sun rises over the Giza Plateau, casting long, sharp shadows across a landscape that has defied time and logic for 5 millennia. Here, the 3 Great Pyramids stand as silent sentinels, their massive forms etched against the horizon of the Sahara. For centuries, the standard historical narrative has remained largely unchanged. These structures, we are told, are the magnificent tombs of pharaohs, built by thousands of laborers through sheer physical will and primitive tools. It is a story of vanity and religious devotion. However, as we look closer at the blueprint of the Great Pyramid, a different story begins to emerge. This is not the story of a cemetery. It is the story of a machine. To understand this alternative perspective, one must look past the sand and the tourist crowds and focus instead on the material science of the stones. The Great Pyramid is composed of approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, weighing anywhere from 2 to 80 tons each. While the majority of the structure is built from local limestone, the inner chambers tell a much more complex geological story. The King's Chamber, located deep within the heart of the pyramid, is constructed entirely of red granite. This granite was not found nearby. It was quarried from Aswan, located over 500 miles to the south. Transporting thousands of tons of granite across such a distance is a logistical feat that challenges the imagination. But why granite? From a purely aesthetic or funerary standpoint, any stone would have sufficed. The choice of granite, however, suggests a functional requirement. Granite is rich in quartz crystals. Quartz is a highly conductive material that possesses a unique property known as a piezoelectric effect. When quartz is subjected to mechanical stress or pressure, it generates an electrical charge. Consider the sheer scale of the Great Pyramid. It is a structure weighing 6 million tons. The granite chambers are located in the lower half of the pyramid, meaning they are being subjected to immense gravitational pressure from the millions of tons of stone sitting above them. If the pyramid was designed as a power plant, this constant pressure would essentially turn the King-S chamber into a massive capacitor. This is not a concept found in standard archaeology textbooks, yet it aligns perfectly with the laws of modern physics. The precision of the construction further deepens the mystery. The casing stones that once covered the pyramid were made of white Chura limestone, a material so pure it is almost entirely composed of calcium carbonate. This type of limestone is an exceptional electrical insulator. In contrast, the inner limestone blocks contain higher levels of magnesium and other minerals that increase conductivity. The result is a structure that is insulated on the outside and conductive on the inside. This mimics the exact configuration of a modern electrical conduit or a microwave waveguide. When we step inside the Great Pyramid, the atmosphere changes. There are no hieroglyphs on the walls. There are no paintings of gods or descriptions of the afterlife. This stands in stark contrast to the Valley of the Kings, where every square inch of the tombs is covered in vibrant religious art. The interior of the Great Pyramid is sterile, functional, and geometrically perfect. The walls of the King-S chamber are polished to a mirror finish and fitted together with such accuracy that a razor blade cannot fit between the seams. At the center of this chamber sits the coffer. Often called a sarcophagus, it bears none of the hallmark of coffin. It is carved from a single block of solid granite and shows signs of being hollowed out using tools that far exceed the capabilities of copper chisels and stone hammers. There are circular tool marks and striations that suggest the use of high-speed drills or saws. More importantly, when the coffer is struck, it rings like a bell. It has a specific resonant frequency. This brings us to the concept of acoustic resonance. Scientists and engineers who have studied the interior of the pyramid have discovered that the King-S chamber is tuned to a frequency that is exactly 1 octave below the human hearing range. It is a low-frequency hum that vibrates through the very bones of anyone standing inside. The 5 granite beams that sit above the King-S chamber, known as the relieving chambers, are not there to support the weight of the pyramid as previously thought. Engineering analysis shows they are unnecessary for structural support. Instead, they appear to be acoustic resonators designed to amplify the vibrations of the earth. But where does this vibration come from? The Giza Plateau is situated over a massive underground aquifer. Thousands of years ago, the Nile River flowed much closer to the pyramids than it does today. As water moves through underground channels and limestone caves, it creates a phenomenon known as the hydraulic ram effect. This movement generates physical vibrations and electrical currents through a process called electrokinetics. If the Great Pyramid was positioned directly over these moving waters, it would act as a massive lightning rod for the Earth's internal energy. The subterranean chamber, located deep beneath the base of the pyramid, shows signs of high-pressure water flow. It is a jagged, unfinished room that looks more like a mechanical pump house than a burial vault. Many theorists believe this was the engine room of the pyramid, where the movement of water was used to initiate the vibration that would then be amplified by the granite chambers above. The mystery extends to the narrow shaft that lead out from the King-S and Queen-S chambers. For decades, these were labeled as air shafts for the workers or symbolic paths for the pharaoh as soul to reach the stars. However, They do not lead directly to the surface in a straight line. They are bent and angled, and they were originally sealed at both ends. They would have been useless for ventilation. In a technological context, these shafts look remarkably like waveguides designed to channel electromagnetic radiation or sound waves out toward the ionosphere. The exterior of a pyramid was once a sight to behold. Covered in 20 acres of highly polished white limestone, it would have reflected the sun's light like a giant mirror, visible from miles away. This limestone casing was so smooth that it was said to be a single, seamless surface. This would have provided the perfect shell to contain the energy being generated within. At the very top sat the pyramidon, or capstone. While the original capstone is missing, legends and ancient texts suggest it was made of a different material entirely, perhaps electrum, an alloy of gold and silver. Gold is one of the most efficient conductors of electricity in the world. If a capstone made of conductive metal were placed atop a massive, insulated, vibrating stone structure, it would complete the circuit. The pyramid would then become a transmitter, capable of broadcasting energy into the atmosphere. This theory changes our understanding of the entire Giza Plateau. The 3 pyramids are not scattered randomly across the sand. They are aligned with breathtaking precision to the stars of Orion's belt and the true cardinal points of the Earth. The Great Pyramid is oriented to true north with an error of only 3/60ths of a degree. This level of accuracy was not achieved again until the 18th century. Furthermore, the dimensions of the pyramid are a mathematical scale model of the northern hemisphere of the Earth. On a desolate stretch of coastline in Shoreham, New York, at the turn of the 20th century, a skeletal frame of wood and steel begins to rise above the horizon. This is Wardenclyffe Tower, the crowning ambition of Nikola Tesla. It stands 187 feet tall, topped with a massive hemispherical steel cupola. Tesla is not building a skyscraper or a simple radio antenna. He is attempting to construct a condor that will harvest the very energy of the planet and broadcast it across the globe, free of charge and without the need for a single mile of copper wire. As we look at the blueprints of this long-destroyed tower, we find ourselves drawn back to the Giza Plateau. The parallels are not merely coincidental. They are structural, geological, and perhaps even intentional. Tesla is convinced that the Earth itself is a giant conductor. He believes that by vibrating the planet at its natural frequency, he can turn the entire world into a high-voltage reservoir. To do this, he realizes he needs more than just a tower. He needs a deep connection to the Earth below and a specific type of stone to channel the power. The Great Pyramid of Giza sits upon the bedrock of Egypt, not as a tomb, but as a masterpiece of material science. When we strip away the myths of the pharaohs, we are left with a machine of incredible complexity. The pyramid is composed of 3 distinct types of stone, each chosen for its specific electromagnetic properties. The exterior was once covered in white Chura limestone. This stone is almost entirely free of magnesium and possesses high insulating properties. It acts as a shield, a protective layer that prevents the internal energy from leaking out prematurely. Beneath this insulating skin lies the core of the structure, built primarily from local nummulitic limestone, which contains small amounts of metal and acts as a semiconductor. But it is deep within the heart of the monument that we find the most critical component. The king's chamber and the massive ceiling beams above it are made of red granite. This granite was hauled from Aswan, hundreds of miles away. It is a stone rich in quartz crystals. In modern science, quartz is prized for its piezoelectric properties. When you apply mechanical stress to a quartz crystal, it generates an electrical charge. Conversely, when you apply an electrical field to the crystal, it vibrates. Tesla is aware of this relationship between pressure and electricity. His Wardenclyffe Tower is designed with a deep subterranean shaft that reaches 120 feet into the ground. He describes this as gripping the earth so that he can shake it. At the bottom of this shaft, he installs a series of iron pipes that branch out into the water table. He is grounding his machine, using the moisture of the earth to create a closed circuit with the atmosphere. If we look beneath the Great Pyramid, we see a mirror of this design. A descending passage drops hundreds of feet into the solid bedrock, ending in a rugged, unfinished subterranean chamber. For decades, archaeologists have dismissed this room as a mistake or an abandoned project. However, proponents of the power plant theory suggest it serves a much more functional purpose. The Giza Plateau is situated above an ancient system of aquifers. Thousands of years ago, the Nile River flowed much closer to the pyramids, and the water table was significantly higher. As water moved through these underground limestone channels, it would have created a phenomenon known as physiochemical friction. This process generates a low-level electrical charge through the movement of ions. The subterranean chamber may have acted as a pulse generator. If the water was channeled through the narrow passages with enough pressure, it would create a rhythmic vibration. This vibration would travel upward through the massive bulk of the pyramid. As the millions of tons of stone began to resonate, the quartz within the Granite King's chamber would be subjected to intense mechanical stress. This is a piezoelectric effect on a monumental scale. The pyramid is not just standing there. It is humming. It is a massive, vibrating crystalline battery. Tesla's notes reveal that he calculated the Earth's resonant frequency with startling accuracy. He understands that the planet has a pulse later known as a Schumann resonance. To tap into this, he needs his tower to act as a giant tuning fork. He believes that if he can synchronize his machine with the pulse of the Earth, he can transmit power through the ground and the air simultaneously. The Great Pyramid appears to be tuned to these same cosmic frequencies. Its dimensions are a mathematical scale model of the northern hemisphere of the Earth. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the planet. If you take the perimeter of the base and multiply it by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference. The pyramid is literally a physical representation of the Earth's geometry, tuned to vibrate in harmony with the world it stands upon. This is the secret of the global power grid. It is not about burning fuel. It is about resonance. But a transmitter is useless if the energy has nowhere to go. At the top of Wardenclyffe, Tesla places his great metal dome. At the top of the Great Pyramid, there was once a golden capstone, or pyramid ion. Gold is one of the most efficient conductors of electricity known to man. If the interior of the pyramid is generating a massive electrical charge through the vibration of its granite core, that energy would naturally migrate toward the highest point. A gold or electrum capstone would act as a terminal, a point of discharge. We must ask why the builders would go to such lengths. In the early 1900s, Tesla is viewed as a madman by his financiers, particularly J.P. Morgan, who famously asked where he can put a meter on such a system. If the power is wireless and available to everyone, there is no way to profit from it. Tesla's project is eventually defunded, and the tower is sold for scrap. The dreams of a wireless world are buried under the weight of the commercial electrical grid we use today. Yet, when we look at the ruins of the Giza Plateau, we see the remnants of a world that may have succeeded where Tesla failed. The pyramid is missing its casing stones. It is missing its golden capstone. It stands as a stripped engine, a gutted machine that has been scavenged over the millennia. We find no copper wires in the pyramid because a wireless system does not require them. We find no light bulbs because the energy could have been harnessed by simple handheld receivers, much like the glowing tubes Tesla used to demonstrate his power in his laboratory. If the Great Pyramid is indeed a wireless transmitter, the implications are staggering. It means that the ancient world was not a primitive society of slaves and stone tools. It was a global civilization that understood the fundamental laws of physics and the electrical nature of the universe. It suggests that they built a network of these structures across every continent, placed at specific telluric nodes where the Earth's magnetic field is strongest. We see similar granite structures in Mexico, in China, and in the jungles of Southeast Asia. Each of them is built with the same attention to geological placement and material composition. They are the towers of an ancient warding cliff, a series of nodes in a planetary circuit that provided clean, limitless energy to a lost golden age. Tesla once said that if you want to find the secrets of the universe, you must think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He was looking into the future, but he may have been looking into the deep past. The connection between his tower and the Great Pyramid is a bridge between two eras of human genius. One was destroyed by the greed of the modern age, while the other was silenced by the passage of thousands of years. As the sun sets over the Giza Plateau, the shadows of the pyramid stretch across the sand like the hands of a giant clock. They remind us that our current understanding of history is only a small fragment of the truth. We are looking at the relics of a technology that we are only now beginning to rediscover. The great granite chambers are silent now. The water has receded, and the gold is gone. But the stones remain, perfectly aligned to the stars and the earth, waiting for us to understand the song they were built to sing. The story of Tesla and the Great Pyramid is a story of a missed opportunity. It is a reminder that the path to the future often leads through the mysteries of the past. If Tesla was right, then the most impressive monument of the ancient world was never a tomb. It was a first step toward a world where energy is as free as the air we breathe. We are left to wonder how many other secrets are hidden in the geometry of the stone, and what would happen if we finally learned how to turn the power back on. Deep within the bowels of the Great Pyramid, the air is thick with more than just a weight of history. It is heavy with the literal pressure of 6 million tons of stone pressing down toward the center of the earth. To the casual observer, these are mere blocks of dead rock, silent sentinels of a long-lost dynasty. But to a physicist or materials scientist, the composition of these stones suggests something far more dynamic. We must look closer at the grain of the rock itself to understand why this specific location and these specific materials were chosen with such obsessive precision. The focus shifts to the red granite that lines the King Chamber. This is not the local yellow limestone of the Giza Plateau. This stone was hauled from Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. It is a material exceptionally rich in quartz crystals. In our modern world, we use quartz in watches, computers, and radio transmitters for a very specific reason. When quartz is subjected to mechanical stress, it generates an electric charge. This phenomenon is known as the piezoelectric effect, discovered by Pierre and Jacques Curie in 1880. Imagine the King Chamber not as a tomb, but as a massive pressure cooker of energy. The granite beams, some weighing as much as 70 tons each, are stacked in layers above the chamber. They are being squeezed by the unthinkable mass of the pyramid structure above them. In any other building, this is just structural engineering. But if the proponents of the power plant theory are correct, this constant pressure is the first step in a gargantuan energy conversion process. The quartz within the granite is being stressed. It is being asked to speak in the language of electrons. At the molecular level, a quartz crystal is a hexagonal arrangement of silicon and oxygen atoms. When you compress this lattice, the atoms shift. This shift creates a displacement of electrical charge, causing a voltage to appear across the crystal. In the king chamber, we are not talking about a single small crystal in a wristwatch. We are talking about hundreds of tons of granite, containing millions of individual quartz crystals, all being subjected to the constant, unyielding gravitational pull of the pyramid. This creates a state of perpetual electrical potential. However, pressure alone is not enough to create a pulse. For that, you need movement. You need resonance. The Earth is not a silent, still object. It is a vibrating body. It hums with a variety of frequencies caused by everything from lightning strikes in the upper atmosphere to the tectonic shifts of the crust and the rhythmic pull of the moon. One of the most famous of these is the Schumann resonance, a set of spectrum peaks in the extremely low frequency portion of the Earth's electromagnetic field. But there are also seismic vibrations, deep subterranean murmurs that travel through the bedrock of the Giza Plateau. The Great Pyramid is situated directly over a fault line, and its foundation is anchored into the solid limestone bedrock. This is not a mistake or a coincidence. By anchoring the structure into the crust, the builders ensure that every vibration of the planet will be transmitted directly into the heart of the stone. The pyramid acts as a giant transducer, a device that converts one form of energy into another. It takes the mechanical, kinetic energy of the Earth's vibration and focuses it into the granite chambers. As these vibrations pass through the pyramid, they encounter the king chamber and the series of 5 relieving chambers stacked above it. Traditional archaeology suggests these spaces were designed to prevent the weight of the pyramid from crushing the burial chamber. Yet, from an acoustical perspective, these chambers look remarkably like a series of resonators. The granite beams are not resting flat against one another. They are separated by small gaps. They are free to vibrate. When the frequency of the Earth matches the resonant frequency of the granite beams, they begin to oscillate. This is the same principle that allows an opera singer to shatter a wine glass. If you hit the right note, the object begins to vibrate with increasing intensity. In the king chamber, the vibration of the granite beams under immense pressure causes the quartz crystals to flex and release bursts of electricity. The pyramid begins to pulse. It is no longer just a pile of stone. It has become a giant crystal oscillator. This electrical energy needs a way to move. This is where the surrounding limestone comes into play. While the granite is a conductor, the limestone that makes up the bulk of the pyramid is a carbonate rock that acts as a natural insulator. This creates a massive electrical differential. The granite core is the active, vibrating heart, while the limestone shell acts as a container, holding the charge and preventing it from dissipating into the ground. It is the architectural equivalent of a shielded cable. The interior of the pyramid also features chambers and shafts that seem designed to handle fluid or gas. If the pyramid were functioning as a power plant, it might have utilized a dilute hydrochloric acid or another electrolytic solution to enhance the flow of ions. When combined with a piezoelectric pulse from the granite, the entire structure will become a massive battery or a chemical laser. The air inside the chambers will become ionized, turning into a glowing plasma. This is not the dark, dusty tomb of popular imagination. It is a brilliant, humming, electrified environment. The implications of this are staggering. If the Great Pyramid was capable of generating a massive electrical charge through piezoelectricity and resonance, what was that charge used for? We have evidence of sophisticated stone cutting, precision drilling, and the movement of massive blocks that seem to defy the primitive tools of the Bronze Age. Perhaps the power was not being sent to distant cities, but was used right there, on site, to power the very tools that built the monuments. Or perhaps It was part of a much larger system. The piezoelectric effect is also reversible. If you apply an electric field to a quartz crystal, it will change shape or vibrate. This suggests that the global network of pyramids might have been capable of both sending and receiving signals. They could have been interconnected through the very earth itself, using the ground as a giant conductor for low-frequency waves. This is the concept of telluric currents. The earth is a giant ball of energy, and the pyramids are the needles in the planetary map, tapping into that energy and regulating its flow. But to maintain such a pulse, the pyramid had to be perfectly tuned. The dimensions of the king chamber, the length of the shafts, and the specific density of the Aswan granite all had to be exactly right. A fraction of an inch of difference would throw the resonance out of alignment, and the pulse would fade. This explains the superhuman precision found in the construction. It was not a matter of aesthetic perfectionism. It was a functional necessity. If the machine was not built to a tolerance of millimeters, it simply would not turn on. The red granite beams in the ceiling of the king chamber show signs of incredible stress. Some of them are cracked, and these cracks have been a point of debate for centuries. Were they caused by an earthquake, or were they the result of the machine running too hot? If the resonance became too intense, the mechanical stress on the stone might have exceeded its breaking point. We may be looking at the scars of a catastrophic failure, a moment when the heart of the stone was pushed beyond its limits and the pulse finally stopped. Even today, visitors to the king chamber report strange sensations. Some feel a heavy pressure in their chests. Others hear a low humming sound that seems to vibrate in their very bones. Electronic equipment often malfunctions. An acoustic test showed that the chamber has a resonant frequency that corresponds to the human heartbeat or the deeper notes of a pipe organ. The stone is still there. The pressure is still there. The quartz is still there. The heart of the machine remains, waiting for the right frequency to bring it back to life. As we look at the immense scale of the Giza Plateau, we must ask if we are seeing the remains of forgotten science. A science that did not rely on burning fossil fuels or splitting atoms, but on the harmonious interaction between geometry, geology, and the natural vibrations of the planet. The piezoelectric pulse was the heartbeat of this ancient world, a clean and infinite source of power drawn from the very earth beneath our feet. And if the pyramids were the heart, the question remains, where did all that energy go, and who was at the controls of the global grid? We are left to face the possibility that our ancestors were not just masters of stone, but masters of the very fabric of energy that binds the universe together. The sun hangs low over the Giza Plateau, casting long, geometric shadows across the parched sands. For centuries, these monuments have been viewed as silent sentinels of the dead, static and unchanging. But if we shift our gaze downward, beneath the paved causeways and the staggering mountains of limestone, a different narrative begins to surface. It is a story not of stillness, but of constant, rhythmic movement. It begins with the lifeblood of the African continent, the Nile River. In the modern era, the Nile flows some distance from the pyramids, redirected by time and human intervention. But in antiquity, the landscape was far more fluid. Geological surveys and ancient maps suggest that during the Old Kingdom, a branch of the river flowed directly past the base of the Giza Plateau. This proximity was not a matter of convenience for transport alone. It was a calculated, foundational requirement for the functionality of the site. If we are to consider the pyramids as part of an ancient power grid, we must look at them as a complex machine that required a constant source of kinetic energy. In this model, the Nile was a fuel. The relationship between the river and the stone is most visible in the subterranean architecture of the Great Pyramid. Below the massive weight of the structure lies a descending passage that plunges over 300 feet into the solid bedrock of the plateau. At the bottom, far below the king and queen chambers, lies a room that has baffled explorers for generations. This is a subterranean chamber. Unlike the precision and polish of the rooms above, this cavern appears raw, jagged, and unfinished. Conventional archaeology suggests it was a discarded plan, a work abandoned as the builders changed their minds and moved the burial site upward. However, viewed through the lens of hydraulic engineering, the subterranean chamber takes on a far more purposeful appearance. The floor of this chamber is a series of uneven pits and ridges, and the walls are roughly hewn. To a hydraulic engineer, this does not look like a tomb, but like a reservoir designed to create turbulence. The theory suggests that water from the Nile was channeled through underground conduits and into this deep, rock-cut pit. As the water filled the chamber and then retreated, it created a rhythmic pulse. This is known in physics as the water hammer effect. When a moving fluid is suddenly forced to stop or change direction, it creates a surge of pressure, a mechanical vibration that echoes through surrounding material. Imagine the Great Pyramid not as a silent stack of stones, but as a giant tuning fork. The subterranean chamber acted as the engine room. The rhythmic surge of water from the Nile created a low-frequency vibration that resonated through the entire plateau. This is where the choice of materials becomes critical. The Great Pyramid is not made of a single type of stone. It is a composite of different minerals, each chosen for its specific physical and electrical properties. The core of the pyramid is built largely of nummulitic limestone. This stone is porous and contains a high concentration of salt. When water interacts with salt and mineral-rich rock, it can create a chemical reaction that produces a weak electrical charge. But it is the inner chambers that hold the key to the energy conversion. These chambers are lined with massive blocks of rose granite, transported from quarries in Aswan, hundreds of feet to the south. Granite is a stone rich in quartz crystals. Quartz is a piezoelectric material. This means that when it is subjected to mechanical stress, such as the vibrations created by the hydraulic pulse of the Nile in the subterranean chamber, it generates an electrical charge. The pyramid was essentially a massive piezoelectric generator. The granite chambers acted as resonators, amplifying the mechanical vibrations and converting them into electrical energy. The quartz crystals within the stone would begin to vibrate in sympathy with the earth, creating a concentrated field of energy that moved upward through the structure. This process was further enhanced by the unique geology of the Giza Plateau itself. The plateau sits on a massive aquifer, a natural underground reservoir of water. As the Nile rose and fell with the seasons, the pressure in the aquifer changed, creating a natural flow of electrons through the earth. These are known as telluric currents. These are naturally occurring electrical currents that move through the Earth's crust, often following specific geological faults or underground water paths. The Giza Plateau is a geological anomaly, situated at a point where several of these natural energy lines intersect. By placing the pyramids at this specific coordinate, the builders were not just building on high ground, they were grounding their machines into a massive, planet-wide circuit. The limestone of the plateau acted as an insulator, while the water in the aquifer and the granite in the pyramid acted as conductors. This created a massive capacitor, a device capable of storing and releasing vast amounts of energy. The scale of this engineering is difficult to comprehend. We are talking about millions of tons of stone, meticulously arranged to facilitate a process that we are only beginning to understand with modern physics. The Nile was the heartbeat of this system. Its annual inundation was more than just a source of life for the fields of Egypt. It was a seasonal surge of power that would have increased the output of the Giza grid. During the flood months, the subterranean pulses would have been at their strongest, sending a massive wave of resonance through the pyramid. This theory offers a new perspective on the canals and causeways that surround the pyramids. Many of these structures, often identified as ceremonial piles, show evidence of water erosion on their interior surfaces. They may have been part of an intricate network of sluice gates and valves used to regulate the flow of water into the subterranean chambers. By controlling the water, the ancient engineers could control the frequency of the vibration and therefore the intensity of the power being generated. The implications of this extend far beyond the borders of Egypt. If the Nile were being used as a source of kinetic energy, it suggests a level of sophistication in fluid dynamics and geology that rivals our own. It implies that the ancients did not see the world as a collection of separate elements, but as a single, integrated system of energy. The river, the stone, and the earth itself were all parts of a grand machine. As the vibrations traveled up from the subterranean chamber, they would have been focused and concentrated by the pyramid's unique shape. The four sides of the pyramid are not perfectly flat. They are slightly concave, a feature only visible from the air during the equinoxes. This concavity would have served to focus the acoustic and electromagnetic waves toward the center of the structure, much like a modern satellite dish. What happened to this energy once it reached the upper chambers? Some researchers suggest it was used to create a chemical reaction within the king's chamber involving hydrogen and other gases to further amplify the power. Others believe the energy was broadcast directly from the apex of the pyramid. But the foundation of the entire system remained the water. Without the Nile, the machine was silent. This deep connection to the river also explains why the pyramids eventually fell into disuse. The path of the Nile is not static. Over thousands of years, the river moved eastward, drifting away from the Giza Plateau. As the water source receded, the subterranean chambers would have dried up, the hydraulic pulses would have ceased, the mechanical stress on the quartz would have vanished, and the piezoelectric generation would have ground to a halt. The great machine would have been starved of its fuel, leaving behind only the magnificent, silent shells we see today. We are forced to reconsider the very nature of ancient Egyptian civilization. We often think of them as a society obsessed with the afterlife, pouring all their resources into the construction of tombs. But what if their primary concern was the mastery of the natural world? What if they were not looking toward the next world, but were deeply engaged in the physical forces of this one? The subterranean currents beneath Giza suggest a people who understood the subtle energies of the planet and knew how to harness them. As we look across the plateau today, we see the bones of a dead civilization. But if we listen closely to the theories of resonance and vibration, we can almost hear the hum of the machine as it once was. We can almost feel the pulse of the river as it moved through the dark recesses of the earth, sparking a flow of power that reached toward the stars. The Nile was more than a river. It was a driver of a global technology that has been lost to the shifting sands of time. The engineering of the subterranean chamber was the first step in a process that defied our traditional understanding of history. It was a point where the raw power of nature was converted into the refined power of technology. The ancient Egyptians had found a way to bridge the gap between the organic and the inorganic, between the fluid motion of the water and the solid permanence of the stone. And as this energy began its journey upward, it set the stage for a transformation that would turn a mountain of rock into a beacon of light. In the next stage of our journey, we will follow that energy as it ascends through the heart of the pyramid, uncovering the secrets of the chambers that acted as a focus of this ancient power. The camera pulls back from the limestone casing of the Great Pyramid, rising high until the entire Giza Plateau becomes a single point of light on a vast, dark map. We are no longer looking at an isolated monument. We are looking at a node in a planetary network. To understand the pyramid as a transmitter, we must understand the medium through which it operates. This is the realm of the Earth itself, a giant, rotating sphere that functions as a massive electrical dynamo. Beneath the soil and deep within the crust, an invisible web of energy pulses with a rhythm that has existed since the formation of the world. In the early 20th century, researchers began to notice a curious pattern. Ancient sites, from the megaliths of Western Europe to the temples of the Andes and pagodas of China, seemed to align along straight paths. These paths became known as ley lines. While early archaeologists dismissed them as mere coincidences or the remnants of ancient trade routes, a different perspective emerged within the holes of fringe science and alternative physics. These lines were not just paths for travelers. They were the veins and arteries of the Earth's natural electrical system. The Earth is a complex electrical circuit. The core, composed of molten iron and nickel, rotates to generate a powerful magnetic field. Above, the ionosphere, a layer of the atmosphere charged by solar radiation, acts as a conductive shield. Between the ground and the sky, a constant flow of electromagnetic energy exists, a phenomenon known as a Schumann resonance. This is a heartbeat of the planet, a low-frequency vibration that resonates at roughly 7.83 hertz. If the Great Pyramid was indeed a power station, it did not need to generate its own energy from nothing. It only needed to tap into this existing infinite reservoir. When we examine the placement of the Great Pyramid, the precision becomes staggering. It is located at the exact geographical center of the Earth's landmass. If you draw two lines of longitude and latitude through the pyramid, they pass through more land than any other lines. This placement is not an accident of history. It is a geodetic necessity. By sitting at the specific coordinate, the pyramid acts as a grounding rod for the entire planet. It is the anchor point for a global grid. But the grid is not merely a terrestrial phenomenon. It is a celestial circuit. The ancients viewed the sky not as a distant void, but as an active participant in the life of the earth. The orientation of the pyramid towards specific constellations, such as Orion and the star Sirius, suggests a synchronization between the ground and the heavens. In our modern understanding of physics, we know that the sun and the planets are connected by massive strings of plasma called Birkeland currents. These invisible filaments carry billions of amperes of electricity through the vacuum of space. The theory suggests that the pyramids were designed to act as transducers, pulling the celestial energy down into the terrestrial grid. Imagine the Giza Plateau as a giant circuit board. The bedrock is composed of limestone and granite, materials rich in quartz crystals. When pressure is applied to quartz, it generates an electrical charge, a process known as a piezoelectric effect. The weight of millions of tons of stone pressing down upon the quartz-rich bedrock creates a constant, high-voltage environment. Below the plateau, the Nile River once flowed through subterranean caverns. The movement of this water, filtered through the limestone, created friction and ionization. This is the same principle used in modern hydroelectric dams, but here, the entire Earth is a generator. The ley lines serve as a conductive wires for this global machine. They connect Giza to other massive stone structures around the world. At Stonehenge in England, at Teotihuacan in Mexico, and at the ruins of Angkor Wat in Cambodia, we find the same signatures of high-energy physics hidden in sacred architecture. These sites are situated on the intersections of the Earth's magnetic field lines. When the Earth experiences a geomagnetic storm or a specific solar alignment, these nodes are activated. The concept of celestial circuit implies that the pyramid was part of a timed system. It was not always on, nor was it always at full capacity. It functioned in harmony with the cycles of the stars. During the spring equinox or the winter solstice, the alignment of the sun and the stars would trigger a resonant frequency within the chambers of the pyramid. This resonance would travel down into the granite core and out through the ley lines, revitalizing the entire global network. It was a symphony of stone and light, a technological achievement that defies our modern understanding of ancient capabilities. We must consider the work of Nikola Tesla, the father of modern electricity, who obsessed over the idea of wireless power. Tesla understood that the Earth itself could be used as a conductor. His Wardenclyffe Tower was intended to be a modern version of the Giza power plant. He believed that by injecting a specific frequency into the ground, he could make electricity available anywhere on the planet without the need for wires. Tesla often spoke of the pyramids in his journals, seeing them not as tombs, but as prototypes for his own inventions. He realized that the ancients had already solved the problem of global energy. They had used the natural geometry of the planet to create a circuit that was both clean and eternal. As we look at the ley lines stretching across the continents, we see a map of a lost civilization that was far more integrated with the planet than we are today. Our current power grids are fragile, dependent on burning fossil fuels and maintaining thousands of miles of vulnerable copper wire. The ancient grid was different. It was built into the very crust of the Earth. It utilized the natural movements of the moon, the tides, and the solar winds. It was a celestial circuit that required no maintenance because it was powered by the universe itself. The question then arises as to why this system fell into ruin. If the pyramids were the heart of a global power grid, what caused the pulse to stop? Some researchers point to cataclysmic shifts in the Earth's crust that moved the pyramids off their precise magnetic alignments. Others suggest that the depletion of the subterranean aquifers beneath Giza rendered the system innate. Without the flow of water to provide the initial charge, the great transducer became silent. The lights across the global grid flickered and died, leaving only the massive stone skeletons of a once vibrant technology. Yet, even in their silence, the ley lines remain. Modern sensors can still detect higher levels of electromagnetic activity at these ancient sites. Dowsers and geologists alike have documented strange energetic anomalies at the intersections of the grid. It is as if the machine is still humming at a low level, waiting for the right conditions to reactivate. The stones of the Great Pyramid still contain the quartz that once vibrated with the power of the stars. The granite chambers still echo with frequencies that can affect the human consciousness. In this documentary journey, we are forced to reevaluate our ancestors. They were not primitive people obsessed with the afterlife. They were masters of a science we are only beginning to rediscover. They understood that the Earth is not just a rock floating in space, but a sophisticated electrical organism. They knew that by placing their monuments at the crossroads of telluric currents, they could tap into the power of the cosmos. The ley lines were the pathways of this power, and the celestial circuit was the engine that drove it. We see the world now as a fragmented collection of nations and cultures. But the grid suggests a different history. It suggests a time when the entire planet was unified by a single technological purpose. Whether it was for communication, for energy, or for a purpose we cannot yet conceive, the global power grid was a pinnacle of ancient achievement. It utilized the very fabric of reality to bridge the gap between the ground we walk on and the stars we gaze upon. The wind sweeps across the sands of Egypt, carrying the dust of millennia. The sun sets behind the silhouette of the Great Pyramid, and for a brief moment, The shadows align perfectly with the lines of the earth. The circuit is still there, written in stone and mathematics. It is a silent testament to a time when humanity did not fight against nature, but moved in perfect resonance with it. As we continue to probe the mysteries of the pyramids, we are not just looking at the past. We are looking at a blueprint for a future that we have yet to reach. The energy is still there, locked in the geometry, waiting for us to find the key to the celestial circuit. The air inside the Great Pyramid changes as one moves deeper into its heart. The limestone passages, cool and pale, eventually give way to a different world. At the threshold of the king's chamber, the texture of history shifts from soft, sedimentary rock to the cold, unforgiving surface of red granite. This is a material at the center of the controversy. This is a substance that fuels the dreams of ancient power plants and simultaneously provides the firmest evidence for the traditional archaeological narrative. This is the skeptic's wall. To understand why this room is a focal point of the global power grid theory, one must look at the stones themselves. These are not local materials. The thousands of tons of rose granite found here were quarried in Aswan, nearly 500 miles to the south. Each block was transported down the Nile on massive barges, a logistical feat that remains staggering today. Why go to such extreme lengths to bring granite to a limestone site? The proponents of the power plant theory argue that the answer lies in the mineralogy. Granite is rich in quartz, a crystal known for its piezoelectric properties. In modern electronics, quartz is used to convert mechanical stress into electrical energy. If you squeeze a quartz crystal, it produces a tiny charge. The theory suggests that the entire Great Pyramid acts as a massive acoustic resonator, focusing the vibrations of the earth into the king's chamber. The weight of the millions of tons of stone above is said to put the granite under constant, immense pressure. In this view, the chamber is not a tomb but the core of a giant transducer. It is a machine designed to vibrate, to hum with the frequency of the planet, and to convert that movement into a steady stream of wireless power. It is a cinematic and compelling vision. We imagine the chamber glowing with an ethereal light, the air thick with the smell of ozone, as energy pulses through the very bedrock of the Giza Plateau. But as we step closer to the walls, the romanticism of the machine begins to meet the hard reality of physical evidence. This is where the skeptic's wall stands firm. Geologists and physicists point out a significant flaw in the piezoelectric argument. For a collection of granite blocks to generate a coherent electrical field, the quartz crystals within them would need to be perfectly aligned. In natural granite, the crystals are oriented randomly. If you compress a block of granite, the tiny electrical charges generated by individual crystals largely cancel each other out. To create a functioning power source, the ancient builders would have needed to synthesize or orient the stone at a molecular level, a feat for which there is no evidence in the geological record. Furthermore, a power plant requires more than just a source of energy. It requires insulation, conduction, and a way to regulate the flow. When we examine the king's chamber, we see a room that is remarkable for precision, but devoid of the expected hardware. There are no remains of copper wiring, no ceramic insulators, and no signs of the chemical etching that one would expect from a high-voltage environment. The walls are polished and smooth, but they are also empty. The skeptic turns their attention upward, above the ceiling of the king's chamber. Here, 5 hidden compartments known as the relieving chambers are stacked one on top of the other. To the technologist, these look like the baffles of a resonator or an acoustic dampening system designed to tune the chamber to a specific frequency. They are strange, dark, and inaccessible to the casual visitor. They seem over-engineered for a simple burial chamber. However, When archaeologists climbed into these spaces in the 19th century, they found something that complicates the power plant theory. On the rough, unpolished surfaces of the granite beams, they found graffiti. It was not the elegant hieroglyphs of a royal decree, but the messy, functional marks of the workmen who built the structure. These marks, written in red ochre, include the names of the work gangs and references to the pharaoh Khufu. They are the signatures of labor, the record of a human construction project. To a skeptic, this graffiti is the ultimate proof of the pyramid's purpose. If this were a high-tech energy machine, why would the internal component be scrawled with the nicknames of construction crews? The presence of these marks suggests that the relieving chambers were never intended to be seen or to function as part of a sensitive industrial process. Instead, they served a much more pragmatic engineering purpose. They were designed to distribute the weight of the masonry above the king's chamber, ensuring that the ceiling did not collapse under the immense pressure of the pyramid's peak. The debate then moves to the sarcophagus. Inside the king's chamber sits a lidless box carved from a single block of granite. It is slightly too large to have been brought through the narrow passages, meaning it must have been placed here during construction. Proponents of the ancient power theory suggest this was a housing for a primary energy source, perhaps a chemical battery or a radioactive core. They point to the hollow, echoing sound the box makes when struck as evidence of its acoustic properties. But the archaeologist sees something different. They see a sarcophagus that was left unfinished. The interior shows marks from tubular drills and saws that were abandoned before the final polishing was complete. There are no traces of chemicals, no radiation signatures, and no evidence of mechanical wear. The box is empty because the king it was intended for has long since vanished, likely at the hands of tomb robbers who breached the pyramid in antiquity. We must also consider the issue of soot. One of the most common arguments for ancient electricity is the lack of soot on the ceilings of the inner chambers. The theorists argue that if the Egyptians used torches to navigate the dark passages, the smoke would have left a thick residue. Since the walls are clean, they conclude that the builders must have used electric light. The skeptic's response is grounded in the practicalities of ancient life. We know the Egyptians used high-quality olive oil or castor oil in their lamps, which burns very cleanly with almost no smoke. Furthermore, the cleaning of the walls over thousands of years by both explorers and the natural movement of air has removed much of what might have been there. In some areas, traces of soot have indeed been found, but they are often attributed to the torches of much later explorers. The absence of a thick black coating is not proof of a light bulb. It is a testament to the cleanliness of their fuel and the diligence of their maintenance. The most difficult challenge for the global power grid theory is the lack of a broader industrial context. If the Great Pyramid was a transmitter, where were the receiving stations? A world powered by wireless energy would leave a massive footprint. We would expect to find the remains of society that used that power, factories, illuminated cities, and motorized transport. Instead, we find society of farmers, scribes, and artisans who left behind millions of pieces of pottery, bronze tools, and wooden plows. There is a profound disconnect between the high technology of a wireless power grid and the Bronze Age reality of the Egyptian Old Kingdom. This brings us back to the stone. The red granite of Aswan was chosen not for its electrical properties, but for its symbolic weight. In the Egyptian mind, granite was a stone of eternity. It was associated with the red heat of the sun and the enduring power of the gods. To encase the king's body in a chamber of granite was to grant him a permanent place in the afterlife. The precision of the joints, where a razor blade cannot fit between the blocks, was an act of devotion, a way of creating a perfect, airtight vessel for the royal soul. The skeptic's wall is built on these observations. It is a wall made of peer-reviewed data, archaeological context, and the simple fact that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. While the idea of an ancient wireless network captures our imagination, the physical evidence keeps pulling us back to the ground. The pyramid remains a masterpiece of engineering, but in the eyes of the skeptic, it is a masterpiece of human muscle and religious fervor, not of advanced physics. As we look at the polished granite, we are forced to choose between two versions of past. One version sees a lost age of technological wonder, a world where the laws of nature were harnessed in ways we are only beginning to rediscover. The other version sees a profound human achievement, a civilization that reached for the stars using nothing more than stone, copper, and the collective will of a nation. The granite does not offer an easy answer. It remains silent, cold, and heavy, a witness to the passage of millennia, indifferent to the theories we weave around it. The mystery of the pyramid does not lie in the absence of evidence, but in the way we choose to interpret the evidence that sits right in front of us. The energy is not in the stones, but in our enduring quest to understand why they were placed there in the first place. The sun rises over the high plateau of the Andes, illuminating a series of stones so massive and so precisely carved that they seem to defy the primitive tools of the era that supposedly birthed them. Across the vast expanse of the Atlantic, the same dawn light touches the weathered limestone of the Giza Plateau. Thousands of miles in an ocean apart, these structures share a language of geometry and mathematics that suggests a common ancestry, a shared blueprint that has been lost to the fog of prehistory. We find ourselves looking at the remnants of what many researchers call the Golden Age, a period where humanity may have possessed a level of technological sophistication that rivaled our own, though built upon entirely different principles. If the pyramids were indeed part of a global power grid, they could not have existed in isolation. A network requires nodes, relay stations, and receivers. When we survey the world through this lens, the scattered megaliths found on every continent begin to look less like isolated tombs or temples, and more like the shattered components of a planetary machine. From the towering obelisks of Axum to the trilithons of Stonehenge, the consistency of the design is haunting. We see the same use of crystalline stone, the same alignment with celestial bodies, and the same preoccupation with vibration and resonance. The evidence of this high civilization is not found in written records, for those have long since turned to dust. Instead, it is written in the stone itself. Consider the Piri Race Map, a document compiled in the early 16th century that appears to show the coastline of Antarctica as it looked before it was covered in ice. To create such a map, an ancient culture would have needed sophisticated cartography and a way to measure longitude, a feat supposedly not achieved until the 18th century. This map is a fragment, a copy of a copy, hinting at a time when the world was fully charted and interconnected by a maritime power we no longer recognize. This interconnection is further suggested by the uncanny similarity in masonry techniques. At Tiwanaku in Bolivia, we find andesite blocks weighing over 100 tons, carved with intricate grooves and T-shaped sockets. These sockets were designed to hold metal clamps, a technique used to earthquake-proof the structures. Remarkably, we find the exact same T-shaped sockets in the ruins of ancient Egypt, Cambodia, and Turkey. It is a specific, engineered solution to a structural problem, appearing in cultures that were supposedly separated by thousands of years and tens of thousands of miles. This is not the result of coincidence. It is the signature of a global engineering standard. In the shadow of the Step Pyramid at Saqqara lies a subterranean labyrinth known as the Serapeum. Here, in narrow tunnels, sit over 20 massive granite boxes. each weighing up to 100 tons. The lids alone weigh 30 tons. The precision of these boxes is staggering. Their surfaces are flat to within a few 10,000ths of an inch, a level of accuracy that today we only achieve with computer-controlled industrial grinders. The corners are perfectly square, even on the interior where it is nearly impossible to maneuver a tool. Traditional archaeology suggests these were coffins for sacred bulls, yet not a single bull was ever found inside. When viewed as technology, however, these boxes resemble harmonic resonators or capacitors designed to hold or focus a specific frequency. They are built from granite with a high quartz content, a material we know today for its piezoelectric properties. The question then becomes, if such a civilization existed, where is the rest of their technology? Where are the gears, the wires, and the engines? The answer may lie in the medium they chose. Our modern civilization is built on plastics, silicon, and light metals that will degrade and disappear within a few centuries if left untended. A truly advanced civilization, one that understood the long cycles of the earth, might choose to build with the most durable material available, stone. By embedding their technology into the very bedrock of the planet, they ensured it would survive for millennia. What we perceive as primitive monuments may actually be the stripped-down chassis of complex machines, their internal components long since scavenged or dissolved by time. The narrative of the Golden Age often speaks of a time when the gods walked among men. In the ancient Egyptian texts, this period is called Zep-Tepi, the first time. In the Hindu tradition, it is the Satya Yuga, an era of truth and perfection. These legends describe a world of limitless energy, global communication, and harmony with the natural forces of the earth. If we consider the possibility that these myths are distorted memories of a real historical period, the pyramids take on a new significance. They are not the beginning of a civilization, but the climax of one. They represent a mastery of physics that we are only beginning to rediscover. The scale of this lost network is perhaps most evident in the ley line theories, which suggest that ancient sites are arranged on a global grid. When we plot the locations of the great megalithic complexes, we find they often fall on the intersections of these lines, creating a geometric web that covers the Earth. This grid aligns with the magnetic field of the planet, suggesting that the builders were tapping into the telluric currents of the Earth itself. If the Great Pyramid was a central transmitter, these smaller sites could have functioned as a wireless distribution system, allowing for the transmission of power or information across vast distances. We must also look at the smaller, more enigmatic fragments. In museum basements and private collections, there are objects that do not fit the established timeline of history. The Antikythera mechanism, a complex bronze computer from ancient Greece, show that the ancient possessed a sophisticated understanding of mechanical gears and celestial cycles. The Baghdad battery, a simple clay jar with a copper cylinder and iron rod, suggests an early understanding of electrochemistry. While these items are often dismissed as outliers or curiosities, they may be the last surviving remnants of a much older and more widespread technological base. The transition from this golden age to the era of recorded history appears to have been violent and sudden. Geologists have found evidence of a global cataclysm roughly 12,800 years ago, a period known as the Younger Dryas. A series of comet impact or massive solar flares triggered a sudden melting of the ice caps, leading to a rise in sea levels and a dramatic shift in the global climate. This event would have wiped out any coastal civilizations and destroyed the infrastructure of a global power grid. The survivors would have been thrust into a dark age, left to rebuild among the ruins of a world they no longer fully understood. What remains are the fragments, We see the descendants of the survivors attempting to mimic the work of their ancestors. In many ancient sites, we find a clear distinction between two types of construction. There is the original layer of massive, precision-carved megaliths, and then there's a later, cruder layer of smaller stones held together by mortar. The later builders were clearly trying to repair or replicate what was already there, but they no longer possessed the tools or the knowledge to achieve the same level of perfection. This pattern is visible from the temples of Luxor to the fortresses of the Inca. It is the story of a falling away, a slow decline from a peak of understanding. As we walk through the halls of the Great Pyramid or stand before the statues of Easter Island, we are looking at the wreckage of a lost world. The silence of these stones is not an absence of meaning, but a challenge to our modern perspective. We are being taught that progress is a linear path, moving from the primitive to the sophisticated. But the fragments of the Golden Age suggest a different story, one of cycles and lost heights. They suggest that the Earth was once girded by a network of energy and light, a system that treated the entire planet as a single living machine. The investigation into this global power grid is more than a search for ancient machines. It is a search for a lost part of the human story. It forces us to ask if we are truly the first civilization to achieve global connectivity, or if we are simply the latest to rediscover science that was once common knowledge. The stones are there, heavy and undeniable, waiting for us to find the key to their function. They remind us that the past is not always behind us. Sometimes it is beneath our feet, buried in the dust of forgotten age, waiting for the current to be turned back on. The search continues in the deepest reaches of our oceans and the most remote corners of our deserts. Every new discovery, every anomaly in the archaeological record, adds another piece to the puzzle. We are beginning to see the outlines of a world where geography was not a barrier but a bridge, and where the power of the earth was harnessed in service of a global community. The fragments of the Golden Age are not just relics of the past. They are mapped to a different kind of future, one where technology and nature exist in a balanced resonance. We look at the precision of the granite, the alignment of the stars, and the scale of the labor, and we realize that the ancients were not obsessed with death. They were obsessed with life and the energy that sustains it. The Great Pyramid and its sister structures around the world were the conduits for that energy. They were the heart of a system that we are only now starting to pulse with again. The Golden Age may have ended in fire and flood, but its foundations remain, anchored in the bedrock of the world, waiting for us to remember what we once knew. As we observe these ruins today, we see more than just stone. We see the echoes of a lost frequency. We see a civilization that spoke to the earth in its own language, the language of mathematics and vibration. The fragments tell us that we are not the first to dream of a wireless world, and we are not the first to look at the stars and wonder how to bring their power down to earth. The story of the global power grid is a story of our own potential, reflected back to us through the mirror of deep time. It is a story that is still being written, one stone at a time. Sufficient energy remains in these fragments to spark a revolution in our understanding of who we were and who we might become. The grid may be silent, but the network is still there, waiting for the right frequency to wake it up. The more we examine the world, the more we find that the boundaries we have drawn between ancient cultures are artificial. The patterns are too consistent, the techniques too specialized, and the knowledge too advanced to have developed in total isolation. We are looking at a single, unified expression of human ingenuity that spanned the globe long before the first pages of our history books were written. This is the legacy of the Golden Age, a period of light that casts a long shadow across the millennia, a shadow in which we are still walking. The quest to understand this era is a quest to understand ourselves and to reclaim a heritage that was nearly lost to the tides of time. The fragments are all around us, hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to see them for what they truly are. They are the components of a world that once was, and perhaps a world that could be again. Through the lens of this documentary, we do not just see the past. We witness a persistent endurance of an idea that refuses to die, the idea that the earth is a source of infinite power, and that we have always known how to tap into it. The journey through these fragments is a journey toward the truth of our own origins, a journey that leads us back to the source of the flame that once lit the world from end to end. In the silence of the megaliths, we hear the faint hum of a global machine, a ghost in the stone that continues to haunt our imagination and drive our search for the light of the golden age. Each piece of granite, each carved relief, and each aligned corridor is a whisper from that time, urging us to look closer, to think deeper, and to realize that we are standing on the shoulders of giants. The power is not gone. It is simply dormant, waiting for a generation with a vision to see it and the wisdom to use it. The fragments are the key, and the door is finally beginning to swing open. On a desolate stretch of land in Shoreham, Long Island, the year 1901 marks the beginning of a construction project that seems pulled from the pages of a science fiction novel. A massive wooden tower rises nearly 200 feet into the air, crowned by a 55-ton steel hemisphere. This is Wardenclyffe, the grand ambition of Nikola Tesla. To the casual observer, it is a radio tower. To Tesla, it is something far more profound. He believes he has discovered a secret of the Earth itself, a way to use a planet as a giant conductor to beam electricity around the globe without a single wire. It is a dream of universal, limitless power, yet it is a dream that will eventually end in ruin and demolition. The ghost of this idea, however, does not vanish. Instead, it drifts across the Atlantic and backward through time, settling upon the sun-bleached stones of the Giza Plateau. The connection between a 20th century laboratory and a 4,000-year-old tomb is not immediately obvious, but for those investigating the pyramid power plant hypothesis, the parallels are haunting. They suggest that the Great Pyramid was not a passive monument, but an active participant in a global energetic system. This theory proposes that the ancients, like Tesla, understood that the earth vibrates at a specific frequency. If one could build a structure that resonated in harmony with that frequency, one could potentially tap into a reservoir of energy that is as constant as the rotation of the planet. To understand how this ghost of technology might have functioned, we must look at the Earth not as a dead rock, but as a living circuit. The ground beneath our feet is filled with telluric currents, naturally occurring electrical charges that move through the crust. Tesla intended to inject his own energy into the Earth, creating a stationary wave that would allow anyone, anywhere, to stick a rod into the ground and draw out power. Proponents of the ancient wireless theory argue that the Giza Plateau sits at a unique intersection of these telluric currents. The Great Pyramid is not placed randomly. It is oriented with near-perfect precision to the cardinal points and situated at the center of the Earth's landmass. This placement, theorists suggest, was a deliberate choice to maximize the structure's interaction with the planet's natural resonance. When we peer inside the Great Pyramid, we do not see the elaborate wall paintings or funerary texts found in later Egyptian tombs. We see a stark, industrial interior composed of materials with specific electrical properties. The majority of the pyramid is built from nummulitic limestone, a material high in magnesium which serves as a relatively good insulator. However, the inner chambers and the passages leading to them are lined with pink Aswan granite. This granite is rich in quartz crystals. In modern science, quartz is famous for its piezoelectric properties. When you apply mechanical pressure to a quartz crystal, it generates an electrical charge. Conversely, if you apply an electricity to the crystal, it vibrates. The scale of this effect within the pyramid would be staggering. The Great Pyramid weighs approximately 6 million tons. That mass is pressing down on the granite structures within the king's chamber. If the earth vibrates, and the pyramid is designed to resonate with those vibrations, the quartz in the granite will be under constant rhythmic stress. This creates a theoretical loop of mechanical and electrical energy. It is an image of the pyramid as a gargantuan crystal oscillator, humming with a low frequency power that is felt rather than heard. Critics often ask where the wires are. If this was a power plant, surely there would be remnants of a grid. But this is where the ghost of Tesla returns. Tesla did not want wires. He wanted to use the ionosphere, the electrified upper layer of the atmosphere, as a return circuit. In the ancient power plant model, the Great Pyramid is a transmitter. The theory suggests that the pyramid once had a capstone made of a highly conductive material, perhaps gold or an alloy of electrum. This capstone would act as a terminal for the energy being pumped up from the subterranean chambers. The mechanics of this proposed energy generation involve a complex interplay of chemistry and physics. Some researchers point to the shafts in the Queen's chamber as conduits for chemicals. They theorize that dilute hydrochloric acid and hydrated zinc were poured down these shafts to meet in the chamber below, creating a chemical reaction that released hydrogen gas. Hydrogen is the most efficient medium for carrying energy. If this gas filled the interior of the pyramid, it would have provided the necessary environment for microwave amplification by stimulated emission of radiation or maser technology. The interior of the pyramid, particularly the Grand Gallery, features a series of notches and grooves that have no clear funerary purpose. In a power plant model, these are seen as slots for acoustic resonators. These resonators would take the low-frequency vibrations of the Earth and convert them into high-frequency sound waves. When these sound waves hit the hydrogen gas in the king's chamber, which is already being energized by the piezoelectric granite, the result is a focused beam of electromagnetic energy. This sounds like a fantasy, yet the physical evidence of the stones themselves tells a story of intense energy. Inside the king's chamber, the granite beams of the ceiling are cracked. Traditional archaeology suggests this was a result of an earthquake, but the cracks are curious. They are not consistent with a simple settling of the structure. Some engineers suggest they were caused by a massive surge of internal pressure, an explosion of the very energy the pyramid was designed to harness. The walls of the chamber are also slightly bowed outward, as if the room had once been a pressurized vessel. If we accept for a moment that this technology existed, we must confront the question of its reach. Was the Great Pyramid a solitary beacon, or was it part of a global network? Across the world, from the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the pyramids of Teotihuacan in Mexico, we find structures that share common mathematical ratios and geological placements. Many of these sites are built over underground water sources or on top of seismic fault lines, both of which are known to increase telluric activity. This leads us to the concept of the global power grid. In this vision of the past, the Earth is dotted with resonant structures, each tuned to a specific node in the planetary circuit. It is a world where power is not something generated in a distant coal plant and sold by the kilowatt hour. It is a world where energy is a part of the environment itself, harvested through the sophisticated use of geometry and geology. The fall of this system, if it ever existed, would have been a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. Just as Wardenclyffe fell because of a lack of funding and the commercial interests of men like J.P. Morgan, perhaps the ancient grid collapsed due to a shifting of the Earth's crust or a social upheaval that ended the knowledge required to maintain it. When the power stopped, the pyramids became silent. They were no longer machines, but hollow shells, monuments to a lost age of enlightenment. Later civilizations, finding these massive structures and sensing their importance but forgetting their function, repurposed them as tombs and temples. They coated the science in a layer of myth and religion. The ghost of the wireless transmitter still lingers in the measurements. The dimensions of the Great Pyramid are not merely aesthetic choices. They are a scale model of the northern hemisphere of the Earth. If you take the height of the pyramid and multiply it by 43,200, you get the polar radius of the planet. If you take the perimeter of the base and multiply it by the same number, you get the equatorial circumference. This number is not random. It is related to the precession of the equinoxes, the slow wobble of the Earth on its axis. The builders were not just building a house for a king. They were building a machine that was physically and mathematically tied to the planet it sat upon. They understood that the Earth is a rotating magnet, a massive dynamo spinning in the void of space. By mirroring the planet proportions and placing structure at a harmonic node, they were effectively plugging the pyramid into the Earth. Today, modern scientists are beginning to revisit these concepts, albeit with more caution. Experiments have shown that the Great Pyramid can indeed concentrate electromagnetic energy in its internal chambers and under its base when exposed to specific radio waves. While this does not prove it was a power plant, it proves that the shape itself interacts with energy in a way that is unique and purposeful. We are left with a chilling possibility. The technology we are only now beginning to master, the technology of wireless power and resonance, might not be a new discovery. It might be a recovery. The skeletal remains of Wardenclyffe and the enduring stone of Giza are two ends of a single thread. One was a failure of the modern age, the other a success of the ancient world. Both suggest that we have been looking at the history of energy through a narrow lens. As the sun sets over the Giza Plateau, the shadows of the pyramid stretch long across the sand. They look like the needles of a giant sundial, marking the passage of ages. But perhaps they are something else. Perhaps they are the antennas of a silent broadcast, waiting for the right frequency to wake them up. The wireless ghost has been resurrected in our imagination, and as we look closer at the stones, we find that the line between magic and ancient physics is becoming thinner every day. The mystery of the grid is no longer just about the past. It is a question of what we have forgotten and whether we are ready to listen to the hum of the earth once more.